Welcome, folks. I'm Jabby Koway, joined by Char Kirk.
What's up?
We are looking at The Last of Us, Episode 1 from Season 1 breakdown from New Rockstars. Thanks so much for joining us. Please hit that subscribe button, bell icon, all notifications, and pretty please vote this up. Let YouTube know you're enjoying what you're watching. While you're subscribing and upvoting, subscribe to New Rockstars. There's a link in the description below if you could be so kind. Click on that, give the original video an upvote, subscribe to them from there, and follow Char Kirk. She's on the social media. So am I. Obs. All right, here we go.
Welcome back to New Rockstars. I'm Erik Voss, and this is a breakdown of HBO's The Last of Us, Episode 1, When You're Lost in the Darkness. Based on the Naughty Dog games written by Neil Druckmann and co-created by Druckmann and Chernobyl writer Craig Mazin, this series hits the heartbreaking survivalist horror notes from my favorite arcs of The Walking Dead. I'm just loving the show, so let's break it down scene by scene for all the visual details that you might have missed, all the little choices that make the show so good. Also, Break Room hosts Brandon, Jessica, and Anna covered the differences from the games in their after show. Give that a watch along with Anna's full explanation of everything you need to know going into the series. Okay, this premiere episode opens with a prologue that's actually not in the games, a 1968 talk show discussing global pandemics.
And that's your biggest worry?
Yes, any kind of virus, but most probably something similar to influenza.
Because of air travel?
Through the air. Coughing.
I'm sorry, I meant people on planes. That was something you described in your book.
Now, in history, this would have been one of the earliest broadcasts about epidemiology, a topic that we are all now familiar with, having lived through COVID. But by setting this opening scene in the 1960s, this series sets our notions of pandemics as a bit antiquated and instead presents an alternate history in which things could have played out very differently. One hypothetical forgotten because viruses are really what we feared from here forward, not fungi. Also, Ellie later deduces that the 60s songs on the radio are Joel's smuggler code with Bill and Frank, meaning nothing new.
Can you break down for me, the dummy, what he was just saying a second ago about the advantage of this 1968 program?
So it's just like setting our reality, or rather setting this reality up as an alternative reality, right? Because it's showing how in that past, much like in our present, we are very concerned with viruses and things like that. For us, the audience watching that scene, we can really relate to it because we just lived through a pandemic that was, for an airborne disease. But this is showing an alternate reality where actually the thing that we ought to be worried about is fungi.
Gotcha.
And that's setting up this whole thing right here.
For me, my brain went somewhere else, which is, it's great that they did that scene. You're already telling the audience, like, while we are respecting the material, like, we will deviate sometimes, because that was totally not in the game. They will take liberties sometimes. They tell you right at the beginning of the show, we will take liberties sometimes. And I appreciate that they did it like that.
Yeah, and that was also one of my favorite scenes as well, just because of the sheer fact that it seemed to really ground it for me.
Bill and Frank meaning nothing new. So this might be the show's way of saying this is really nothing new. We have known about all these natural threats for decades.
Yeah,
this
true.
Opening TV broadcast also evokes the TV broadcast that opened I Am Legend with Emma Thompson as a doctor in the past proclaiming the cure for cancer, which led to that present-day viral outbreak. The host of this TV show is played by Josh Brenner, Big Head from Silicon Valley, and the fungus fear, Dr. Newman, is played by Josh Hanna, who played the brother in the Mummy films and a number of other
Oh
great
my
roles.
God.
Yeah.
A fungus that infects the mind of an ant, theorizing that such fungi could evolve to infect humans due to rising global temperatures.
One gene mutates, and an Ascomycetia, Candida, ergot, Cordyceps, Aspergillus, any one of them could become capable of burrowing into our brains and taking control not of millions of us, but billions of us.
The camera cuts to Newman right on Cordyceps because that is the name of the real-world ant-infecting fungus that Neil Druckmann based the fungus of the Last of Us games on, and it is the fungus of this story. He goes on to warn,
Billions of puppets with poisoned minds, permanently fixed on one unifying goal: to spread the infection to every last human alive by any means necessary.
So if that happens,
We lose.
And during all this, the camera shows the studio audience, who look fully nonplussed and unafraid, dull-eyed puppets just ready for the taking.
Yeah.
Now, the awesome-looking opening title animation mirrors the fungal spread that's set to haunting acoustic notes strummed by composer Gustavo Santaolalla, just like the animation that opens the games. Gustavo also composed the great music in the games, and here he works with David Fleming. But this spreading of the Cordyceps fungus reminds us of other HBO openings like Game of Thrones or House of the Dragon, like it's spreading across a world map, rising its own fungal city structures that supplant our human civilization. Eventually, the fungus actually takes the shape of a map of the continental United States. And it's subtle, but you can see tiny spores floating from stalk to stalk. And 2 of the stalks take the shape of a taller person and a shorter person, representing
That one was
Joel and Ellie,
obvious.
the focal characters of this story. Now, The Last of Us is really one of the better versions of the whole lone wolf and cub relationship, which, of course, Pedro Pascal also played really well in The Mandalorian.
The daddy
now, the
of
first half
TV.
of this pilot episode follows Joel's daughter, Sarah, in 2003 Austin, Texas, the way part 1 of the game's prologue follows Sarah. But we spend a lot more time with Sarah on the show, which is the show's way of saying just because we get to know characters for extended sequences doesn't mean this show is not going to kill them off. This is survivalist horror. It's called The Last of Us. Oh, and by the way, if you have not played the games and you don't want to get spoiled about what happens, I'm going to save my speculation for details that might set up currently unestablished plot points known from the games or from the comics in a segment at the end. So if you don't know anything about what happens in the future of this story, don't worry, I'm not going to spoil anything in these breakdowns.
Well, when he gets into that, I guess you can just fuck off.
No, I don't care. I don't care. How long did I play of the game? For probably like a quarter of
I
it.
wasn't paying attention to how much you played. I was letting you just have your moment with the live stream, unadulterated, like just not interrupted by me and my overbearing whatever.
Yeah,
I was trying to let you just be.
It's hard for me to play that game just because I die a lot. This is why I firmly believe unless I become one of those people that joins a crew in a post-apocalyptic zombie world, I'm dead.
Sure.
Super dead.
The open window blows a gentle breeze to wake up Sarah, and there are some tiny particles floating over her nose, but to be clear, Neil Druckmann did clarify that they decided that instead of spreading via airborne spores, this fungus is going to spread via these creepy oral tendrils.
That's what I was talking about.
It's actually inspired by concept art from the game. In the game, Sarah reads a newspaper where it suggested that the fungus came from crops imported from South America, but here the radio newscaster mentions disturbances in Jakarta and riots and warnings for all Americans to get out of there, suggesting that the origin of the show might be from Indonesia or somewhere else in Southeast Asia, one of the countries bordering the Indian Ocean.
That's why I was pointing that out in our reaction, because I had read something about how they had decided not to do spores. And so I noticed those like little tentacle things coming out of his mouth, and it just looked super gross to me. And so, yeah, that's
different, I guess.
It's different.
But throughout the first episode, the story beats are very similar. Sarah celebrating Joel's birthday and fixing his watch as a gift, Joel fretting over a contracting job. Notice how Joel slaps his wrist after accidentally checking it for the time, a little nod that he misses having a watch that works properly, something Sarah has likely noticed.
You didn't catch him slapping his wrist?
I thought he slapped the table. That's what I thought.
I saw him do that. I was like, why did he do that? It was like a question in my mind. I was like, him looking for the time, and it just wasn't there. I registered it. I just didn't know why he did it.
Also, in the background of this living room of this house is Joel's guitar. Joel's playing of the guitar is something that becomes very important later on in the games and probably of the show. Now, a lot of the dialogue is taken directly from the game, like Sarah later joking that she sold drugs to pay for the watch, Joel pretending that the watch didn't work. So I'm not going to point out every time a line or something is from the game exactly, but Sarah's shirt is interesting to point out. This is the same pink Halligan Drops shirt, but instead of the 2010 tour, it's now the 2002 tour. Because in the games, it takes place in 2013. In this show, the flashback takes place in 2003. Also, really cool detail, in the game, most of the tour stops on that shirt are locations you later visit in the game. Boston, Pittsburgh, Jackson, Salt Lake City, etc. All the details are very 2003 though, like a Destiny's Child Survivor poster on Sarah's wall. She's got a band tour shirt with 2002 on it. There's Dido's white flag on the radio. And in the classroom, a president, a good old George W. Bush, who before becoming president was governor of the great state of Texas. So they might have already had his photo on their wall. And in the classroom, Sarah gets distracted by this glare.
I wonder why they changed the dates like that. If they'll explain it, if the creators will explain it at some point, because I would love to know.
I was curious about that.
The kid's wrist is twitching, muscle spasms being an early symptom of infection. Also, a subtle cough before the bell rings there.
Yeah, I heard the subtle
how they build the tension, because they know that we watching this are now a little triggered by hearing coughs. This episode is titled When You're Lost in the Darkness, which is the first part of the Fireflies mantra. That mantra ends with, look for the light. Here, Sarah gets distracted from the light by what? A cough. In the repair shop, the phone rings.
I didn't catch the twitching.
I did.
I just thought that kid was just like, you know, like kids do shit.
No.
You know, like kids play with a pencil or something like that, or like, you know, whatever. You remember Andrew Garfield when he was, you know, hit the pencil on his head in Amazing Spider-Man? That's just like kid behavior. You know, that's what he did as a 30-year-old to emulate being a kid. I just took that as this person being a child.
I think I watched something, maybe on the airplane on my way back. I forget the movie now that I watched. People were getting sick, and one of the symptoms was the finger twitch. Oh no, it was a TV show on Netflix. Sweet Tooth, before they were like really got sick, the symptom was like the little pinky twitch. And so when I saw that, I was like, oh no, too itchy.
All right.
Yeah.
In the repair shop, the phone rings in the beginning of the scene in the background, and then a moment later, that Lebanese co-owner closes early, rushes Sarah out of there, suggesting that call was from family in the Middle East, alerting her to how bad things are getting. And then in her neighbor's house behind Sarah, Nana contorts and her mouth opens wide as that fungus infection takes hold of her body. But she stays out of focus, so we can't really tell what's happening, which makes it even creepier. It reminds me a lot of that scene in It Chapter 2 when Pennywise takes the form of the old woman creeping in the background behind Bev.
Yeah.
Okay, so two things. That was a great liberty that the creators of this show took with that grandma in the wheelchair. I thought that was a great moment of artistic licensing, just going, okay, well, here's what's happening. You know, because that's not something we see in the game at all.
Right.
And I just think that was a neat, creative way to show just the early stages of this whole thing that's about to just go crazy. The old lady that they just showed from It Chapter 2, we met her and she was awesome.
She was the sweetest little old lady. But coming back to this and the old lady, I thought there was a level of foreshadowing when we first see her in the wheelchair because she totally looked like a zombie.
Sure.
I thought that was cool how they did that with the people in the 1960s TV show and gave you that feel. And then once again with the grandma. So I knew that she was going to turn. It was just like a matter of time.
Right.
This is to eat in this scene. Remember earlier, she refused to eat those biscuits, which director Craig Mazin hinted might be some breadcrumbs here that are going to come back later. Like there might be another symptom to the fungal infection being loss of appetite because the fungus is really eating your flesh from the inside. It doesn't need other food. Sarah borrows the DVD Curtis and Viper 2, which is a reference to the games, Joel's favorite 80s action movie that gets referenced.
What movie are you guys gonna watch? What's Joel into?
Curtis and Viper 2. That's the one that's been on my
I do not remember
radar.
that.
I don't.
Now, later that night, when Sarah enters the house, which, by the way, why would you do this?
Yes.
Notice how the wheelchair on the far right is empty. Just a little concerning sign that fungus is now puppeting Nana's motor functions. It's just unsettling to realize that this fungus, in a way, fixes our physical ailments to make us more mobile. Now, Brad Leland is actually Buddy Garrett from Friday Night Lights. Love seeing him show up here, and he does such a great job acting this moment. Now, what we think is his paralyzing fear in his wide eyes is actually the fungus taking over, because later when we see him in the street, he attacks someone else.
Yeah.
He too is infected here. Now, the tendrils that snake out of Nana's mouth are even more sickening, in my opinion, than the spores of the game.
Yeah.
But a little physical detail here, I love how they stick to the victim's wound as Nana raises her head. So the first time we see a bite happen, it's not a cannibalistic zombie bite. She's not trying to feast on her brains. It's a parasite transferring from one host, burrowing into the bloodstream of a new host. Now, this truck sequence.
When I first saw that, I thought it was like she bit off some of the hair in the process of biting the person. I didn't realize it was tendrils when I first saw that.
At first, I thought that it was, just like chunks of muscle, perhaps, like how it can kind of look like little strands. But then once the tendrils started moving, I was kind of like, ooh, this is so gross, so much grosser than I imagined.
Is awesome. It plays out similarly to the game. We see the burning farmhouse, the way they pass the family, leaving them behind, all the highways blocked off. But Craig Mazin shoots this in these amazing long takes. There's a 50-second shot from just inside the truck, in which they must have perfectly timed and choreographed people running down the street, lit by the truck's headlights. The fact that we stay in the chaos of the truck reminds us a lot of the amazing chaotic car long take of Children of...
Since you said it, I'm gonna say my opinion on this. I really, really wish that they made that one long take. I thought it was fantastic the way they handled it, between the shooting and the editing and the sound design and how they, borrowed from the game and brought it to life. It just the tension that it induced, all that was fantastic.
Yeah.
But I wish that they made it one long shot, just like Children of Men, because that's what I was thinking about after the fact. I talked about that on the live stream with Sintel. I'm just like, why couldn't they pull the Children of Men? I mean, I get that it's more expensive, but come on. Because it's a game, it's one long take, and you're just looking at it from his daughter's perspective while Joel and Tommy are in the front seat, right? You get this sort of almost claustrophobic fear because you are fixated on this one camera angle.
Yeah.
In the show, I would say, have something similar. I think that the director wanted to be able to see his daughter's face and her expression as she's looking out at this stuff, maybe get different angles. Get it with one long take. Fake it. Like they've been doing oneers for the past several years and just faking it. Fake it here and make it work. That's all I wanted. This is one of those few instances where I was like, this is where a oneer would have been perfect.
Which is so funny because you're usually the guy that's like, I'm so over
I'm
oneers.
over the oneers.
Yeah.
Yes, I am very much over the oneers, except this is like where it would have been totally perfect and made sense to do. In the game, it feels like a oneer, right?
Yeah.
But you're enhancing it, taking it further further giving the audience a new perspective, especially those of us who were like familiar with the game, by moving that camera around in ways that you couldn't in the game.
I like how it's a movie screening of Midnight Madness erupting into the street. And then as the truck backs up, the entire time in the sky, I didn't notice this the first time I looked at it, you can totally see the 747 losing control up above their heads. But we don't really notice what's happening until too late because of all the chaos that's happening around us. Actually, it's that plane's front wheel that breaks off and ricochets off the building and wrecks their truck. Afterward, Tommy gets separated as Joel and Sarah are pinned on, where's that? Pioneer Way. Joel will become a bit of a westward moving pioneer on this series. But as in the game, they are stopped by a soldier who gets the order to kill them, and Joel, who either he or
that's a cool cameo.
We're a Desert Storm veteran, knows what it looks like when a soldier gets a message to kill. The soldier fires on them, hitting Sarah, and Tommy kills off the soldier before he can kill Joel.
I kind of wish that I didn't know that it was a wheel. Perspective, the scale of it looked wrong. When we watched it in the show, it just looked like a part, nondescript. It just looked like a part coming out of the plane, and it caused chaos. I didn't know it was the wheel. Now that I see that, I'm like, oh, scaling is kind of shit.
It didn't look like a wheel to me either. And that sticker on the truck, maybe I'm dumb, but I didn't remember him being a veteran in the game.
You called that out. Oh, no. Okay, sorry.
I did call that out because I think it's really neat how the show does a really good job of just subliminally giving us information that's there.
Yeah.
So that it like makes sense for his character to be this badass and for him to understand in a split second what's going to happen because he has that experience and he knows. And I feel like they've done really well with like how they've been showing the articles and things in the background that kind of tell you what to expect.
Yeah, I don't remember that coming up in the game either.
Okay. I thought that maybe I just forgot.
I think that's a detail they added. I was like a little surprised at when you initially said that because I'm like, you are the one that told me about that. I didn't remember that. Like, I know we saw the sticker. I think I was still sort of taking in the world.
Yeah.
I didn't even focus in on what that sticker said when I first saw it.
Sarah bleeds out and dies. But there is something interesting that happens here. We don't actually see the exact moment Sarah dies. The camera swings over to Tommy, whose voice cracks as he says his brother's name. And then when we swing back to Sarah, her eyes are lifeless. So then we jump to 20 years later in the Boston quarantine zone, following another kid that we don't stay with for too long. They wheel him in and they give him a FEDRA patch to hold. So FEDRA is the Federal Disaster Response Agency, a FEMA-like agency from the game that becomes the country's governing military authority now. This kid sees a poster explaining how long the infection takes based on where the wound is on the body, the leg being the longest, which is where this kid's wound is. We don't even know if this kid can read, like he clearly doesn't understand what's going on, and it's especially cruel how this soldier hides her expression after he tests positive.
What if I told you that after we gave you some medicine, we're gonna find you your favorite food to eat?
And later, this poor kid.
I loved how that actress handled it. She was fantastic. I just can't stop singing her praises. I mean, it also helps what the filmmakers did there, the producers and all of them. That was just a very, very, very well put together scene. It did a lot without saying much.
Well, it covered a lot of exposition, right? Because it shows you, like if you get bit in the neck or whatever, however many minutes you have and all the different body parts. And so we're learning something, but rather than tell us, they're also showing us this incredibly emotional scene.
And the tools.
And the tools and all of that. So we're learning a lot while getting a bunch of story as well, which is the best way to do that.
What if I told you that after we gave you some medicine, we're gonna find you your favorite food to eat?
And later, this poor kid is identified by his bright green shoelaces, which I think is a nod to Schindler's List when that girl in the red coat is later identified on a pile of corpses that's being carted over to be burned. And notice how, despite shoelaces being a hot commodity in the QZ, they do not scavenge this boy's shoelaces, either out of respect or maybe out of caution. Now, in the game, the infection testing process is actually revealed by an adult man testing positive in the QZ, and he gets shot right there. But this more emotionally brutal death was added to get parallelism between Joel cradling Sarah, and now Joel is numb as he cradles this dead boy. This actually was the original ending of this episode, before HBO suggested taking more time to build out the present day, and most importantly to introduce Joel to Ellie.
That was the ending of the first episode? That's such a random place to just stop.
I could see how it could just stop there. It shows like his character arc and how he went from being, the concerned father to
I get that, but that's a terrible place to stop. HBO gave great notes there. That would be a terrible place to stop. stop. God, like, no. I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
Absolutely co-sign on that. But that's a bad place to just cut off the first episode.
I think it was smart to show Ellie, to just kind of set all of that up and be like, all right, you guys, we know that you know that you're going to get Ellie, but, you know, just to satisfy you, we'll make this a little bit longer, and boom, you see her and off they go.
Joel takes the worst jobs like this one and sewer maintenance, perhaps sewer maintenance to learn what the best smuggling routes are, but really also to just get the most valuable ration card so that he can bribe the soldiers. He passes some wanted posters offering a reward for Marlene. Posters like these appear in the QZ in the game. We see some amputees wearing Desert Storm shirts and a guy in a Gore Lieberman shirt. For the Democratic candidates in the 2000 election, Al Gore and Joe Lieberman, all of their fashion and technology froze in the early 2000s when everything fell apart. We also see some guys assigning to paint over some graffiti left by the Fireflies. That's their sigil, and we know that they're recruiting from throughout the QZ.
It's been told to me like too many times, but the actress who plays Marlene is the same actress from the game.
No wonder she was so good.
No wonder she's fantastic.
I know. I was like, she's so good.
Yeah.
Okay.
The amputees we see might be a world detail of people having cut off wounded limbs to prevent infection. In the game, it's not totally clear if amputation works like that. In the Left Behind game, Ellis had his arm amputated, but we never really find out for sure if it worked because he ended up bleeding out before they could find out. 3 trespassers are hung in North Square. You can see signs for North Square. In real life Boston, this is a historic area. Well, the whole city's a historic area, but this is a special area where Paul Revere's house is. These kinds of executions by British soldiers were part of what agitated Americans to revolt in Revere's time. Joel meets up with this one soldier, and we see this soldier's hand twitching, showing how bad he's jonesing for these pills, but also how he will have a very itchy trigger finger later. Joel knows how bad this soldier is addicted.
Or I could just shoot you. Yeah, but then what would you do?
I love the detail that Joel needs the bag back because plastic bags without holes in them would be something in limited supply. As in the game, Joel is a smuggler who's always holding on to odds and ends that he can workshop into useful tools. Tess chats with Robert, whose guys jumped her, about a car battery that she paid for and he sold to someone else, a car battery that we later learned didn't even work. Now in the game, it's actually a cache of guns that Robert scammed from Joel and Tess. But this show seems to establish Joel and Tess as a bit less bloodthirsty and also wants to establish a stronger bond between Joel and his brother Tommy, and Joel having to travel westward to find Tommy before he ever meets Ellie. Ultimately, this introduces Joel as, at first, a more peaceful, protective figure, which Pedro Pascal is so good at, as Din Djarin on The Mandalorian. We meet Ellie, who initially goes under the alias of Veronica, played by Bella Ramsey, Lyanna Mormont from Game of Thrones. The Fireflies have chained her up and they test her cognitive motor functions. Why are they doing this? Well, we later learn that she has been infected, and they're trying to prove that the infection didn't really affect her.
Real quick question for the audience. How did y'all feel about it being changed from them trying to get guns to them trying to get the car battery? Because Sintel brought up an interesting point from his perspective, which is this change is sort of the Han shot first moment, because it establishes our characters as less peaceful. They're more hard edged. They're willing to just take a life like that. In the game, it's like, as you saw in that clip, she just shot him dead. It's like, whatever.
Him,
like, it's kind of cold, you know, and kind of like how Han Solo was initially portrayed, A New Hope, versus the George Lucas rendition where Greedo shoots first. I wanted to know how you guys felt about that change, where it sort of softens the characters as opposed to their original inception.
I actually didn't remember anything about the guns, and so I was like, oh cool, this battery thing, it was fine to me. But then I thought that the fact that Robert was deadly afraid of Joel showed me that, you know, he is someone to be feared. If someone like that is afraid of Joel, he's got to have some history.
No, that is true. I just brought it up because Sintel brought it up, and I was like, oh, maybe some people in the audience feel that way too.
Now, this cell only has "when you're lost in the darkness" written on red on the wall, but not the full phrase like it's written in yellow outside in the area where Joel meets up with the soldier. It's just a way of showing how the Fireflies do not need the full propaganda internally, just bits and pieces of it to remind them of their mission, but in different contexts. Now, this guy who operates the long distance radio takes Joel's cigarettes, which remember was the $5 extra that Joel got from the soldier. The radio operator takes the cigarettes before he tells Joel that he just heard nothing from Tommy, which kind of sucks. Joel just had to pay for bad news. It's any answer at all that costs the payment. So Joel drunkenly plots a westward trip to find Tommy, and we see the watch set Sarah repaired, its face broken in 2 spots. Now, when Jess joins him in bed, she rolls him away from her so that he won't see her facial wounds right away and get worked up when he's super drunk and high. fine. Like throughout the morning, he doesn't even notice until he raises his head to see her face the next morning during breakfast. Now, I might be wrong, but that woman that they passed in the wheelchair might be the same pregnant woman who radioed her parent earlier that they were about to be a grandparent. It's hard to tell if the woman in the wheelchair has her baby bump still. I don't really know what happened. I just hope that pregnant woman ended up being okay. Marlene gives Ellie this knife that Ellie from here forward is extremely attached to, and Marlene reveals that she knows her name is not Veronica and that she was actually the one who put Ellie in the Federal Military School. Marlene also brings up someone named Riley. There's a lot more to all this that I will bring up at the end in the spoiler section. Joel and Tess are scared when they find a recent infected victim.
You think he came down after he was infected?
Maybe down here is where he was infected.
Now, beyond the yuck of the cordyceps outgrowth, the fact that this person was pinned against a wall, I think is what is most unnerving about this. It's as if he was on the ground when he died, and then the fungus lifted his corpse up as it grew to find other victims. Joel and Tess find Robert and his guys already dead, and Marlene and her crew already wounded. It's really interesting that we don't see this go down. We come upon it after. Just like we didn't really see any initial conflict between Robert's crew and Tess, we didn't see those trespassers actually get hanged. Think about it, this is HBO. They can get as violent as they want. But in the second half of this episode, they particularly withhold the violence. The violence in the QZ in the second half of this episode is rarely ever shown happening. It's more quiet, it's hinted at. Crime scenes stumbled upon after the fact, not explicitly shown.
This show will get violent. There was an article I was reading in the Last of Us early reviews video that I made, and I glanced at something and then quickly just jumped out of it. I felt like it was just saying way too much information, especially for like a review that's coming out before the show even drops.
Right.
I'm like, that's a really dick move to give away that much information about the show, even for someone like me who's played the game. It will get violent.
I think this is a smart move to kind of reserve the violence a bit, maybe giving us a false sense of security, or to make the impact of the violence that comes later on more impactful.
Yeah, but I do like that as a storytelling, technique to come into a situation that's happened as opposed to always showing us everything.
Sure, yeah.
You know?
Ellie finds Joel's local radio and his book of Billboard #1 hits with this code sheet for communications from Bill and Frank. 60s songs, meaning nothing new, 70s songs, meaning new stock is in, and 80s songs Ellie's able to deduce later using Wham's Wake Me Up to trick Joel, meaning trouble out there. And this was after Joel went in and out of sleep to the sounds of Sarah's dying breaths. Before, when he slept, when he was drunk and loaded, he heard his brother Tommy shouting his name, which is probably a memory from their past fight. So Joel and Tess and Ellie head out past the wall, where they're stopped by that druggy soldier from before, who tests Ellie to learn that she is positive. So Ellie stabs him with a knife, and Joel, flashing back to the parallel moment when he faced a soldier who killed his daughter, finally lets his rage boil over and he snaps. This is what Marlene referred to by what they're capable of, and why this episode held off showing us Joel being violent in this modern era until this moment, despite the early section of the game here showing Joel and Tess disposing of and killing a ton of guys. Instead, we just get this shocking and singular punctuated moment of violence from our hero that feels especially earned, grounded in the most devastating loss in his life, and directly motivating why protecting Ellie is so important to him.
I think it's also really cool that he did that with his bare hands. You know, that they made the choice not to have him shoot someone, and he just like really goes for it in this animalistic way with his rage.
Yeah.
It's just way more terrifying to watch someone go to town on someone like that.
I do wish that they didn't show us the flashback in that scene. I brought that up on the live stream. I was like, I think we get the point.
I see what you're saying, but for me, it definitely helped to punctuate that point. And so maybe it is a little bit of spoon feeding, but I personally didn't mind it so much.
I knew exactly what he was thinking about the entire time because the show keeps telling us what he's thinking about. He's got the watch on, it's got his busted, and you hear the sounds when he's falling asleep. Like, you know exactly what's on his mind. When the gun is pointed at him and Ellie's right there, and there's a close-up on his face, I think he's thinking about his past, making a different decision than he made before. And then they went and showed it to us. I was like, okay, I get it. So I was on the live stream with Sintel and his girlfriend MC, and Sintel was like, no, I liked it, just like you said. And MC was like, I got it without the flashback. It's a bit of spoon feeding. It seems like it's split 50-50 with my very unscientific measure. So.
And specifically what triggered the memory for him was the light. He was blinded by this soldier's flashlight, just like he was blinded by the headlights back in Texas. Because when you're lost in the darkness, you must look for the light. Craig Mazin had an interesting point about Ellie in this moment.
When Ellie watches him beating a man to death, she is activated. earlier in the episode when Sarah sees him killing.
Oh, it's a good
this old woman
contrast.
who's infected,
Yeah,
who
I didn't
has
think
to
about
kill
that.
He killed her. She cries. Ellie likes it.
And in the companion podcast from HBO, Mason talked about this series being a love story, but how unconditional love can be a very dangerous thing.
That's what I was asking you about when we were watching it, because I thought at first, I said to you, I was like, wait, does she like that? To me,
I wasn't sure.
It looked like, yeah, and you were like, no, I don't think so. But I like that contrast that they did there. It's really cool how they're having these parallels between the two girls and them being so different.
We will continue to come back to the notion that love conquers all, and that's problematic. That we think of love as this solely positive thing, a beautiful thing, and it is. But love, especially the love that a parent has for a child, is primal, and it can lead to the most intense fear, and the most intense fear can lead to the most intense behavior, including violence. And if you scratch the surface of tribalism, racism, xenophobia, you will find love. Love is not always good.
And the music that plays with this comes from Joel's local radio from Bill and Frank. Depeche Mode's Never Let Me Down Again. An 80s track,
and troubling.
Danger is ahead. Now, Depeche Mode's song is about taking a ride with your best friend, but that friend is really addiction. So this bond forming between Ellie and Joel, not necessarily a healthy thing. And Mason promises that we will hear this song again this season at a key moment. The toppled towers that they head toward on their way to the State House compare to the opening titles. The road of the fungus spreading toward its towering stalks, because the path before all these characters is truly infected. Now onto our spoiler corner for folks more familiar with the games.
I was wondering, maybe he's going to talk about this in the spoiler section, but one of my friends worked on that specific scene at the end, right? And he said in his post, he's like, there is an Easter egg there if you look really carefully. Now, I have no idea what that Easter egg is, but I'm wondering if he's gonna pick it up.
So Marlene actually knew Ellie's mother, Anna, long before Ellie was wounded and infected. This switchblade used to belong to Anna, as we learn in the prequel comics American Dreams, and becomes Ellie's primary weapon in the games. That could be why she's so pissed when Joel steps on it and swipes it away. He's essentially stepping on her mother's memory. However, in this show, it seems like Ellie did not know Marlene before Ellie was captured by the Fireflies. It seems like her mother's relationship with Marlene is a full mystery to her. Now, Riley was Ellie's teenage partner from the Left Behind DLC that was initially referenced in the Last of Us game. This is the girl she snuck out with and hung out with at the mall, which is where they were both infected, but Ellie survived. Riley will appear later in the season, played by Storm Reed. There's actually a shot in the trailer of them taking a photo together. I'm so excited for this show. I will be breaking down the Easter eggs every Monday.
So I guess he didn't get that Easter egg. I don't know what it is.
I enjoyed this breakdown. There was a lot of things that he was showing comparison, contrast, and giving more context to that I didn't pick up on. I wish he didn't show us the airplane wheel, because that made me a little sad. I appreciated a lot of the elucidating that he did in this particular breakdown, because it helped me to understand the intention even more. Yeah, I thought that was cool. And the inclusion of the voiceover by Craig Mazin, thought that was very profound. I like to pontificate on those kinds of things, you know, and really understand the human condition from all different angles in a very curious kind of way, positive and negative, because it can be to our detriment, the amount of love that we have for our own offspring. It's a biological trick to keep our, DNA alive. That sort of love, that passionate love, can lead to things that are unhealthy if left unchecked. It's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, that was just a really interesting take, and like you said, very profound, especially, I suppose, today and in a lot of the like woo-woo type things that I enjoy looking at. It's all about like love, and love will set you free, and it's this like really positive feeling. But when he puts it in that context of like, well, actually love can be the underlying cause of a lot of really terrible things like racism and xenophobia and all of that, it just kind of puts it into a different perspective. Now I'm even more excited for the rest of the show.
I appreciate that a lot, because what have you come here to say that's different than what has been said?
Exactly.
And I think that's super cool. It's like, that definitely is an idea that hasn't been explored in that particular specific way. So yeah, it has me excited for what's ahead. You guys, thanks so much for hanging out. Hopefully you enjoyed this. Do subscribe, bell icon, all notifications, vote this up, please. I'm Jabby Kawai. This is
Achara Kirk.
Peace out.